Hi and welcome to A World of Words. I'm Vanessa and today I'm doing my February reading wrap-up. So I have 5 books to talk about in today's wrap-up, so let's just get right into it. First book I read was Percy Jackson's Greek Gods by Riordan. This is a guide to Greek myths, but told from Percy's perspective. So he's telling you all the Greek myth stories, and of course he has all of his hilarious little snarky comments and like any personal experience he has with a particular god. He talks about it, and it is just so funny and actually really interesting and helpful as well, because I read this book right after I read Sea of Monsters, the second Percy Jackson book. I really recommend reading it if you haven't finished the Percy Jackson series yet, or if you haven't read the Percy Jackson series in a while and want to do a reread. I highly recommend reading Percy Jackson's Greek Gods because it gives so much more details on all of the different myths, or most of the different myths, and it's really interesting as I was reading The Titan's Curse, because often in the Percy Jackson series you might have noticed that often we'll bring up different myths and different gods and things like that, but they don't go into a whole lot of detail. They kind of just give you enough detail for you to get by in the series, which is fine when you're reading the series. It doesn't take that much away from it. You can understand it perfectly fine, but I know that I was kind of curious about some of the weird stories that were just briefly mentioned in a passing or that might be more important to the plot. So I found reading this book a really helpful and really entertaining way to get that more in-depth detail. It's not super in-depth, but it's a more in-depth look into the Greek mythology. And so now when they're bringing up different stories and different gods in the series, as I'm reading it now, as I'm filming this partway through the 4th book in the series, Battle of the Labyrinth, by the time this comes up I'll probably have finished it. We'll see. So when they're bringing up different monsters and gods and things, I'm actually able to recognize their names and kind of remember their story, and so that's really interesting. And I'm really glad that I did read that at this point in reading the series. So I highly recommend this book. It was so entertaining. I was laughing pretty much every page, and it was just so much fun. The next book I read was Shadow Scale by Rachel Hartman. This is the sequel to Seraphina, which I absolutely loved. Seraphina, you might remember from last month's wrap-up. But Shadow Scale, it wasn't quite as good. It was pretty disappointing, if I'm going to be completely honest. I felt like it really suffered from second book syndrome. It was very slow and was a lot of random traveling around, but the sad thing about it is that this isn't like the second book in a trilogy. This is the second and final book in the duology. There's no more after this. It took me a really long time to get through. I think it took me a ridiculous amount of time because I ended up finishing it in a couple really long bursts because I wanted to finish reading it so I could read the next Percy Jackson book. I already was partway through this, and I didn't want to DNF it because I did want to find out what happened with Seraphina, but I kept putting it down, and I would go almost a week, I think, without picking it back up. Also, I was really disappointed with the ending for this one. Seraphina, if you didn't know, had a really cute romance in the first book. I was really curious to see what happened with that and what happened with it. And if you've read this, then you know it was really weird and really disappointing, actually. There was the promise of all of these new and interesting characters for this book, and there was also the looming threat of war in this book. You didn't really get a good chance to get to know the new characters at all, and I wanted to like some of them, but things were happening that made it so that you couldn't really get to know the characters. And the war didn't really have as much of a ominous presence as I expected it to. I thought the book would be more fast-paced and more like action-packed, but it was just a lot of traveling, and it didn't seem like there was that much at stake, even though there should have been. So those are my spoiler-free thoughts on this. I'm not doing a book talk on it just because I don't feel like it. This was pretty disappointing, but I will say the cover is really nice. I mean, I do own this because I found it for pretty cheap, so I guess that happens sometimes. But the cover is really nice, so I might Instagram it or something. I mean, you know, it's pretty. It's a nice looking cover. It'll look cute on my shelf. at least there's that. Next, I read Percy Jackson, The Titan's Curse by Riordan. I absolutely love this book. I look on the cover, we get to see the Pegasus Blackjack. I love that Pegasus. That Pegasus is amazing. And I also love Bessie, it was like a cow mermaid, basically. I forget, something with an O was what it was called, but that thing was just the sweetest thing and it was so adorable. I loved it so much. This book was really good. I was a little bit disappointed at first that Annabeth wasn't going to be a major part of this book because I was really starting to like Annabeth and I kind of want to see the relationship kind of speed up. She was kidnapped in the very beginning of this, which I think is set on the back, so I don't think that's a spoiler. So a lot of the quest was like to save her, plus of course there's other things going on since the person that kidnapped her also wants to destroy the world, as these gods naturally do. So it was another really fun adventure. We got a couple new characters in this book. I'm not really crazy about any of the new characters though. None of them are particularly my favorite. So there's that. But it doesn't mean I didn't like the book. The book was amazing. And Apollo was introduced in this, and since I know that there's now that series, The Trials of Apollo, I found him absolutely hilarious, and I can't wait to get to the point where I can actually read that book because I still have Battle of the Labyrinth, whatever the 5th one's called, and then I have all of the Heroes of Olympus before I can read The Trials of Apollo, and the next one's coming out soon, so lot of Rick Riordan to read, but I'm really enjoying it so much, and this one definitely did not disappoint. The next book I have to talk about is actually an audiobook. I started deciding that I should listen to audiobooks while I decorate my happy planner, since that can tend to take me a while. I was watching some TV shows while decorating and I miss a lot of the TV show because I'm not actually physically watching it, and so I decided that audiobook would be perfect. So I actually listened to Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella, and I loved it. I did not expect it to be half as good as it was. I'd heard good things about it, but I heard that it was a comedy and it was about a girl with anxiety. So I wasn't really sure how that was gonna go because I don't think anxiety is supposed to be funny. But it was handled really well. It wasn't that the anxiety itself was funny, because that wasn't funny. That was just a real thing that Audrey had to deal with. The family drama that was also going on at the same time was really entertaining, and it was just a really cute, funny family drama. The narrator was just hilarious. I highly recommend this audiobook. There was one part where I feel like I'm gonna go into spoilers real quick because I do want to mention this. I'll put like spoilers on the screen and then, okay, the one thing that I didn't like it and the one thing that made it a 4-star instead of 5-star book for me was that they kept alluding to the fact that Audrey was bullied or something. And they didn't really say if she was actually bullied, but there was an incident that happened in the past that is what caused her social anxiety. And throughout the book, it's kind of hinted at that there are these other girls involved, but they never go into it, and you're just sort of, I guess, supposed to imagine it for yourself, or you're just, I guess it's not supposed to be the point. But for me, I feel like for something to be such a big part of the plot that the character is recovering from and then to not tell us exactly what it is, it was very disappointing, and it seemed to be a little bit like, I don't know, lazy storytelling to me, because you have to have the readers imagine what happened rather than actually saying what happened, and I wanted to know what sort of incident is so bad that it could have caused a social anxiety, because I don't know. I couldn't think of anything that would be so bad to cause her to not be able to leave the house or look people in the eye or anything. Like, what could have possibly happened to have caused this? I had no idea, so I was really disappointed when we didn't find out, and I was just like, I wish she would have said why. That was really my only problem with the book. Otherwise, I thought it was really great and really entertaining. But yes, 4 out of 5 books. 4 out of 5 stars. It was such a fun read, and I liked it a lot. The last and final book I have to talk about this month was another audiobook that I listened to. The audiobooks, none of these are exactly in order because I listened to the audiobooks at the same time as I'm reading the other book. So it's like, it's kind of mixed up and doesn't exactly fit neatly into a lineup of books that I read. So the final book I have to talk about is The Crown by Kiera Cass. I don't think I like the audiobook, like the narrator, nearly as much as I like the narrator for Finding Audrey. She was fine, but I felt like at times it was a little bit distracting, which is something I'm noticing about these audiobooks. In Finding Audrey, I think the male characters might have been played by male actors. Either that or the narrator was really amazing at making it sound like a boy's voice, because when the narrator for The Crown was being the male characters, she talked in like this really funny voice to be the male characters, and it was really distracting. Whenever a male character would come on, I'd be like, oh no, because they'd be talking in the weirdest voice, and I feel like it would have been better if you just read it, but I'm noticing that they always do this in audiobooks. If you know an audiobook, just change the subject real quick, that actually has different actors play different characters, let me know, because I would love to listen to that. That sounds really amazing, and it sounds a lot less distracting than female narrators trying to play male characters. Like, I feel like just read it through would be better, but I guess you're not allowed to do that. I don't know. Anyway, besides that, I did really enjoy this book. I think I do prefer the original Selection trilogy, which a lot of people have said that they prefer the original one. I think I do prefer that more because this one didn't even really have the threat of the rebels attacking, aside from people just being discontent with the caste system being taken away. People were still having their original prejudice of the different castes that was still present and going on, and that was a problem. But as far as like a plot, it didn't really, you know, feel like there was any danger. Like, it was just a romance, whereas the Selection was primarily the romance, but there was also this kind of side thing that was entertaining and had me a little bit more like, ooh, this is interesting. I did like the final results. I was most surprised and not surprised by her final choice, which sounds weird, but like, I'm gonna put spoilers on the screen now, I guess, because I can't talk about the ending because I didn't do a book talk for it, so I want to talk about the ending real quick. And you can just mute it till the spoilers go away. So part of me expected her to end up with Kyle, and I thought they would be cute together. I thought that seemed like where it was going, actually, for the longest time, and they seemed like they really liked each other, and then all of a sudden they didn't like each other, and that was kind of weird. Like, she was falling for Kyle. It kind of makes you doubt everything that happened in the air, because then all of a sudden they had that conversation that said, no, they don't like each other. And I was a little bit thrown off by that. But then she did end up falling in love with Eric, and she like ended up with Eric. I also expected that, because how else are you going to have drama in the Selection where it's a girl picking out who she wants to be with from all of these suitors if it's not going to be someone she's not supposed to end up with? It was either going to be Eric or that other guy who showed up at the end. Merrick? I want to say Malik, but that's Magnus and Alec. Merrick or Merritt or something, the Ilya guy. Thought that might have caused a bit of a scandal if she had the whole Selection and then ended up with him, but he just randomly shows up in this book, so she couldn't have ended up with him because that would have been weird, you know? She can't just end up with some random guy that wasn't even in the first book. That would have been kind of upsetting. So she ended up with Eric, which I kind of predicted that as well, because drama. You need to have the drama. Partway through the book, I kind of knew that she was going to end up being in love with Eric, and the drama was going to be that he's not part of the Selection, so she can't be with him, and it's gonna be sad and all this stuff. But I knew parents are maxed in America, so we know her parents are lovely people, and that they're not going to force their beloved daughter to marry someone that she doesn't love. So I enjoyed the book. It was entertaining. but I feel like the stakes weren't super high. It was still a fun book though, so I forget what I rated it. I rated it either 3 stars or 4 stars. I don't remember. Those are all the books I read / listened to in the month of February. Let me know if you've read any of these books and your thoughts on them in the comments below. Also let me know what you've read in the comments below. If there's any books that you want to chat about in the comments, please feel free to let me know what books you read this month or what your favorite book that you read this month being last month being February, because I make so much sense. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I upload new videos on Mondays and every other Friday, plus the occasional surprise video, so please subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. And thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye!